In order to introduce factoring by grouping, we'll look at the following example. So let's look at this expression, x times a plus 3 times a, and we could factor out the a. So let's do that. Let's just put the a in front and factor a out of this term. We're left with x, and factor a out of the second term, and we're just left with 3. Now let's look at a similar example. Instead of a now, I'm going to write, let's say, 2b plus 7 in parentheses. And again, instead of capital A, I'm writing 2b plus 7. And now instead of factoring out a, I'm factoring out this expression in parentheses. I'm putting the 2b plus 7 in front. So in this term, we're left with x when we factor that out, and in this term, we're left with 3 when we factor that out. All right, so basically this is what we do when we factor by grouping. This is sort of the second step. Let's now go backwards and start at the first step. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply through by x. All right, so here multiply through by x in that first set of parentheses, and we have 2bx plus 7x, and I'll multiply it by 3 in the second set of parentheses, and I have 6b plus 21. Now let's factor this expression. So what we're going to do is we're going to group together the first two terms and the last two terms. That's where the word grouping comes from, and pull out whatever common factor we can. So here we can pull out an x. So we're working our way backwards. And from the second group, we can pull out a 3. And if we do that process and we're lucky enough to end up with the same expressions in parentheses, then we can factor out that expression. And this process that we did here, that's called factoring by grouping. In example 1, let's group together the first two terms and the second two terms, and I see from the first two we can factor out 5a. And here we're left with 2x plus 1. And from the second, it looks like we can factor out 3b. We factor out 3b from this first term, and we're left with 2x. And from the second term, we're left with 1, 2x plus 1. So we were fortunate enough to end up with this same expression in parentheses in both terms. So we'll factor that out. 2x plus 1, bring that in front. And from the first term, we're left with the 5a, so put that in. And from the second term, we're left with this 3b, so put that in. So there's our factorization. Let me mention that one hint of the process, one hint that tells us that we should use factoring by grouping is the fact that we are factoring something here that has 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the only factoring method that we have for an expression with 4 terms is either common factor or factoring by grouping. All right, let's do the same in the second example. We'll group the first two and the second two, and I see from the first two we can factor out x squared. And from the second two I see we can factor out a 2. All right, let's factor out x squared here, and we're left with 3x. And from here we're left with 2, 3x plus 2. Factor 2 out from this term, we're left with 3x. And factor 2 out of the 4, and we're left with with 2. So again, 3x plus 2, the same thing in both sets of parentheses. So that can be pulled out in front. And put what's left in parentheses, x squared plus 2. Number 3, group together first 2 and last 2. From the first, we can factor out 2a. And we're left with 3x minus 2. Now, when we have a negative in the middle here, always factor out something, a negative number. All right, so instead of factoring out, we can factor out 5b. We'll factor out negative 5b. All right, so here we are left with 3x. And here, if we factor out negative 5b from 10b, we're left with negative 2. Okay, make sure that's correct. When you multiply back, all right, you can always check by multiplying back, multiplying through. We get, multiply through here, negative 5b times 3x is negative 15bx, and the second multiplication we get plus 10b. Negative times negative is positive, so that's correct. Let's pull out the 3x minus 2 in front, and we're left with 2a, subtract 5b. All right, in number 4, again, we'll group together. And we can pull, I see we can pull out 3a from both terms. All right, pull out 3a from the first term, and we're left with 5x. And from the second, and we're left with 7, or negative 7. All right, now we're going to pull out, this is negative. We have this negative sign here, so pull out something that is negative. Let's see. We can pull out 2b. So pull out, factor 2 from 10, and we're left with 5. And we pulled out the b, so that would be 5x. Pull out negative 2b from 14b, and we're left with negative 7. Again, when you multiply back that second term, minus 2b times minus 7 is plus 14b. All right, put the common factor of 5x minus 7 in front, and what's left is 3a minus 2b for the parentheses. Okay, let's look at number 5. All right, from the first set, I'd like to factor out 10a. I see we can factor out 10a. And so here we'll be left with 2x and minus 3. And from the second set, I see we could factor out 7. And we're left with 2x minus 3. All right, let's pull out that 2x minus 3 in front. And for the second set of parentheses, we have a 10a plus 7.